Well, I thought what I would do, I'm doing a restoration job on some old fence. And I thought I might walk you through just a little bit of this project, not a lot of it. This is one of the panels that was damaged in Readyville during the tornadoes. You see, they're old panels, they're twisted. You can see the corrosion, the rusting through at the bottom where this bottom rail literally just set on the ground. And you see a lot of this style of fence. You see it in cemeteries, you see it a lot of houses and things. It's an old fence, but the customer I'm doing this for, the client, he was blessed to have some panels that weren't in quite a bad a shape. This one does have a broken bottom rail, but I can fix that. The biggest problem with this particular job was the spacing on this rail is basically roughly 14.5 inches between the rails. And this rail, I've already moved one of these, so I can't measure that one. These were like 15 and a half spacings. I've already moved this some, so it's not going to show it accurately, but that's been moved a little bit, but this was basically 15 and a half, so they were, overall it's about 2 inches difference. This was a 39, actually about 3 inches. These were 39 inches, I think, top to bottom, and this one is, if I can get it hooked there, this one's, can't see it. This one's basically 41 inches top to bottom. So what I decided to do, and I've mentioned this before, that these are not held together. They're just friction held together. The rust is set up in them, so they get a little hard to move. But I don't have any, over the years I've tried to figure these things out. Somebody may have a better idea than I do. There's no lead, there's nothing that these are just, they put them together, they get them set to the height, they bolt them up, and then they just stay there, unless somebody's climbing on them or a tree falls on them. They do pretty good. Now, I know that some of the old paints they used in the 1800s, early 1900s are pretty thick, but I can't find anything that tells me that these were held together by anything other than friction. I'm going to turn I got my big fan on, kind of makes it hard to hear. All right, let me go back. So what I've done, I've already started moving this rail, and I thought I'd just kind of show you the way I do it. I've welded a piece of 1 by 1.5 square tube in here, and I clamp the top rail to that, use a lot of clamps, and I get it straight, because this one, they get a little twisted, and then I also square it up. So I pull a square before I move anything. I pull a square. Now it's not going to show up now because I'm off. I've already adjusted some. I go to that end and I come down here. This is at 787 and 7/8. And what I did, I moved this. Now this one's going to be off because I've already moved this second rail. But this one was, when it was down basically in this position, it was at 87 and 7/8. Like I said, I've already moved this. Then I just go in and I make some grease pencil marks at 14 and a half on each one of these. I just go down the row, make my marks. And then basically it doesn't take too terribly long. It's not a lot of heavy hammering. I'm not trying to beat it to death. But I started down here, and then as you tap it, it just kind of works its way out. Then it kind of gets tight. So I come down to the other end, and that's what I'll be doing here. See how that moves pretty easy. And also some other things I did on this, if you ever have to do any of these. Because restoration work, every job seems to be different, but what I did on this, I take a torch and I heat up the bar to kind of get the old junk off of there. I mean, most of these, there's not any paint left. A lot of it's just rust over the years. There is some paint, but I just burn that off. Make sure you have good ventilation. Do it outside. I've got exhaust fans in my shop. I got fans running, and when I'm burning, I open that door and I blow, get everything out of here. You don't want to breathe this junk. So I burn off the balusters, and then I take and I heat up this area right around here, and that just helps loosen any rust that may be in those holes, because I'm going to tell you there's rust in those holes. And I don't know if you can see it down here, but anyway, it just helps that break loose. Then on this one, I did a little something different. I got a squirt can of oil, and last night before I quit, I just went in and put a drop of oil on each one, just to kind of get in there and help loosen the rust up. So then it's just a matter of realigning this, and I'll fix all these bends later. But you can see how it moves. And it doesn't take a lot of force. You just got to do it easy. So I'm back here to the middle now. And as it squares up, it moves even easier. It's when you get it out of all kind of cattywampus. Anyway, I do that until I get everything lined up to my lines. You see I'm not... Once I get to my lines, see I'm right on my line, and I do that all the way down. And then now, like here I've got a slightly bent, and this is iron, it's not steel. And most of this, you can see here how this hoop is sitting a little cockeyed. A lot of this, you can just bend back over. And then when you do that, then you'll have to make some, now you gotta be careful on these. Sometimes you got to be careful, don't break them, but a lot of times if they're twisted, I'll just heat them up, I'll heat them up back in here, and I'll just take with a pair of pliers and just twist those and get them straight again, okay? Now these, I'm assuming, I've never heated one, try to pull them apart, but I'm assuming these finials are put on there with some, either they're heated up and the rod's put in there with a lead or something, just to hold them in place, because they don't come off unless you really heat this up and give it a good twist. So I'm assuming they're using a lead compound or something as a solder situation, because there are no welds on this. This stuff is made, I mean, they had some early forms of welding back then, but it wasn't what we consider today. They depends on when these fences were built. These fences were built, on up into the early 1900s. But anyway, now what I'm going to do down on this end, and this is a little different, and I'll talk you through it. I'm not really showing you, since I've got to shorten this 2 inches. I literally just come in here and I take my 4.5 inch grinder with a cutoff wheel, and I literally just cut every one of these off, because what I'm eventually going to do is I'm going to move this up about, I got to move this up about 2 inches. So if I got to move that 2 inches, instead of me doing all this hammering, I got to cut these off anyway. I just cut them off level with this point, and I know that this is generally, even though it's a little crooked, it got a little bend right down there. I have to watch it, make sure you don't have any really out of whack. But if this is straight, then you got a good straight bottom, and then I take this piece and I just knock all these little pieces out. I do it on my anvil with a punch. I just pop them out. So those come out pretty easy. And then I re-drill this bottom rail, I mean ever so slightly oversized. I do that, then I dress these up, get rid of the scale or paint, and then I put the new rail bottom on. It's a little bit of a fitting job. Sometimes it's kind of tricky, but put it back on. And then I'll show you, let's go out here. I'll kind of show you what the finished product looks like, because I'll tell you a couple other things here. So let me pull this one out here. So this is what the finished product looks like. I have resized this one, and then what I do is I go underneath and I weld underneath here. I go in there and take a I have an Ingersoll Rand scaling hammer. It's got the little needle scaler, kind of break that rust up, and I just put, can't really see it, because they're not pretty welds because it's such nasty material, but I put 2 welds underneath each one on each side and do that on each one. And I do that way it's going to stay squared up. It's going to do better because now it's going to be square, and then you can get them straight, get them looking pretty good. I'm not painting these. They're not getting sandblasted. If a client wanted to, you could have these sandblasted and powder coated. Most people just like the patina, and honestly, these could sit out in the weather for another 50 to 100 years and not bother them a bit. This iron, as long as they're not in the ground, it's just going to continue to weather. Where they fail, you very seldom see them rust through up here. You generally see them rust through on the bottom rail. So that's kind of what you're looking for. And I showed you that on these other ones. Let me put that back. These are some of the ones that I've already replaced. And the good thing is I can always use these for parts if I need them. But you see how the bottom rail deteriorates. I mean, it just goes to nothing if it's sitting in the dirt. These up here, I'm serious, this thing's been out in the weather over 100 years. It could probably got another 100 years to go, because it seems like this is iron, it's not steel, so it is an iron material. And once it kind of gets to a certain state, it just hangs out and stays there. I mean, there's not stress on it or anything like that, but you can see these are bent all to pieces. And I have, if a customer didn't have a spare panels, I have gone in and reworked these. I have rehammered and heated and gotten those hoops back in shape. It just takes a lot of time, and since this client had some spare panels, thank goodness, I was just able to modify them to fit, because I've got a run of fence. There's 100 and something foot of fence, and I'm trying to match it. And here's another one over here I've got to do. This is the last long panel I've got to do, and you can see the kind of shape it's in. It's actually got a little small piece there. So I'll bring it in. What I do is bring it in, and when I make the new ones up, redo the spare panels, I make them fit this dimension. So when I go back, now I am going to have to put some, I've got some, these things use connector post, different types. This is one of the connector posts. You can see how these are adjustable. They came with square-headed bolts, and these went in the ground. These were put in the ground. I'll try to show you. Let me see if I can find, I think I've got one in here. Let's see if I can find one. These things are pretty interesting the way they went in the ground. Like I said, these things could be purchased, shipped, down to wherever your house was. All right, here's one. Here's what one of the brackets looks like complete. Now, a lot of these over time do rust off. So what they did, they had this piece, and they would literally, and there's some of this missing, but they would bury this in the ground. So they dug a, this is the brace post. So this is this is at ground level. And then they had a brace post that went up, and you can see everything's mechanically connected. Now, these right here, you're talking about taking time. Yes, you can heat and cajole and work and get these apart. Yes, you can. I generally will just modify some of these straight posts, build me a new push in the ground foot that can just literally be pushed in. Like I said, if there's no stressors on the fence. But these had a long piece that went in the ground, and they would dig a big hole, and it had a flat plate down here across the bottom. And when they filled that up with dirt, this was not coming out. That's why most all of these end up getting cut off. And of course, down in the dirt and stuff. I mean, it's amazing that these are still as good a shape as they are after being in the dirt for 100 years. So it's pretty impressive. Engineering is really amazing on these things, but these are all adjustable, so they could just fit them together. And if it's brand new, it's like putting together a Lego set. but in fencing. So those pieces right here slip over the top of these, and they got a little slotted hole so they can make little micro adjustments. Pretty slick engineering, and like I said, holds up for a long time. So that's kind of what I'm working on this particular. I've done several restoration projects in my career. I don't mind doing them. They do, depending on what you're doing, you try to work with your client on cost, and I try to keep everything as original looking as I can. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But if it's if things want to be super historical accurate, and I've had some fences where I've just literally taken them apart, put them all back together, and trying to keep them very historically accurate, depending on the what they want to invest in that. So anyway, it's fun stuff. It takes time. You just got to be patient, but this stuff is pretty malleable. Most all of this I can cold bend back. You can take a hammer, and when I flip this over and take the bottom rail off, I'll straighten all of those at the same time. You can put a little heat on. You got to be careful putting heat on this stuff though, because iron like this, when you heat it up to a certain point, especially as old as it is, it can just kind of fall apart. It's the grain in it is very porous, and it's not like modern steel. It's not as strong as modern steel, but it sure holds up to the weather. But like I said, structurally, this doesn't have any tension or pressure on it. It's not going to hurt anything. So anyway, that's the job I'm working on. I've been working on this past week and hope to finish up this next week. And more than likely, what I'm going to do on my post is I'll just take the line posts like this, the ones I had out there, I'll straighten them. I'll probably end up welding, like this one has a base. Most of them don't. A lot of them, this bar, the bracing bar that goes back is missing a lot of times. And you don't have, these are usually at the junctions of each panel. And then they've got some other smaller line posts in there. But a lot of times, you got parts missing, all this type of stuff. So I'll just go in and make, just kind of fabricate a new one and reuse the parts to keep it looking authentic. But anyway, that's kind of where I get to. That's a little bit trickier. This repair is pretty straightforward. It's all about keeping it straight, square, getting it welded up while it's square, and then it's done. Like I said, this stuff moves, and since there is nothing in here in these holes. I have yet to find anything that comes out of this. I kind of expected when I first got into this to start, there was a lead or something. There's just not. It's just strictly a friction fit, and that friction fit just holds it all together. All right, that's all about it for today. I'm going to get working on this and try to get this one knocked out. And I got one more long section to do, and I didn't have but about 1, 2, 3, had about 5 or 6 sections to do on this fence. So it was damaged, like I said, in our tornado in Readyville at a historic home. So try to get it back up. All right, y'all have a blessed day. Take care.